Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Renu Tyagi from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today we are going to discuss about the module Impact of Air Pollution and Occupation on Cardiorespiratory Functions under the paper Physiology and Sports Anthropology. At the end of this module, the student will be able to understand the causes of air pollution due to men's activity. Will be able to understand the different type of air pollutants and its various causes. Will be able to understand the various type of cardiovascular diseases due to air pollution. Will be able to understand the impact of air pollutants on cardiovascular systems and hence recommend some ways and means to reduce the air pollution. When men's population was small and the technology was not much developed, environment could easily absorb or adjust the human and industrial waste. With the increase in the human population and great advancement in the technology in the recent past, the waste material has multiplied in amounts and this has resulted in contamination of our environment. The contamination of environment is called the pollution. Pollution is an undesirable change in physical, chemical or biological characteristics of our air, water or land caused due to excessive accumulation of pollutants. Pollution adversely affects biological species including humans. The basic cause of pollution is man himself. This has been caused through overuse, misuse and mismanagement of natural resources to fulfill our needs. By polluting the environment, we have wiped out many species of wildlife and ultimately we have harmed ourselves and we have become a victim of the self-created problem of pollution. Now, what is pollution? Pollution can be defined on the basis of environment where it occurs, and it can be different type of pollution, whether it can be air pollution, water pollution or soil pollution. Air pollution refers to the release into the atmosphere of the material or pollutants harmful to man. Polluted air adversely affect the physiology of the masses of population, especially the cardiorespiratory function of human being. Effects of the air pollution can be studied by studying the effects of occupational exposure to particular air pollutant in the working environment and assessing the cardiorespiratory problem thus occurred. Occupational studies may explore the cardiorespiratory risk to specific varieties and intensities of the exposure to the air pollutants. Now let's see what is air pollution. Air is the most important element of living organisms' environment. Clean and pure air is extremely essential for man's survival. As a result of human activities for progress and efforts to make life more comfortable, the quality of air is deteriorating day by day. Air pollution is global, but the effect is not as much as it is in smokers, which affect the individual specifically. Pollute means to make or render unclean, unfavorable alterations through direct and indirect effect of man's action through changes in the energy patterns, radiation levels, chemicals and physical constituents and abundance of organisms. These changes affect man directly through supplies of water, agricultural or other biological products, his physical objects or possession or his opportunity for recreation and appreciation of nature. The production of pollutants comes as a byproduct of men's action. They are the residues of things human make, use and throws away, such as pesticides, automobile exhaust and industrial discharges. But they are the contaminants of technological society with a high standard of living. What are the different air pollutants? Pollutants can be dispersed in gaseous, liquid or solid form in air at normal temperature and pressure. The latter two were referred as aerosol by Gibbs, that is suspension of the particle in air. Gases and vapors forms discrete molecules in air. The gases and vapors are the contaminant gases which generally form the moisture in air to dilute their physical properties like density, viscosity and thus became indistinguishable from the clean air. All molecules of contaminant gases in air are equivalent in size and possibility of capture by cardiovascular and respiratory tract surfaces. What are aerosols? As compared to the gases, pollutants which are equal to size, aerosols, that is the dispersion of solid or liquid in air, have significant particle size. Size adversely affect motions, thus the possibilities of coagulation, dispersion, sedimentation, impaction on the cardiovascular and respiratory surfaces differs. When all the particles in an aerosol are same in size, such aerosols are termed as monodisperse like natural pollens. But generally, aerosols are composed of different size of particles and are termed as polydisperse or heterodisperse. In addition to the size of particles, surface, volume, shape and density greatly influence and affect health. Aerosols are generally classified in terms of their process of formation. The different type of aerosols are dust, fume, smoke, fog and haze, etc. Dust is an aerosol formed by the mechanical subdivision of bulk material into airborne fines having same chemical composition. Fume is an aerosol of solid particle formed by condensation of vapors. They coagulate very rapidly forming clusters. Smoke is an aerosol formed by the condensation of the combustion products. Mist is an aerosol droplet formed by the mechanical sharing of the bulk liquid. Fog is an aqueous aerosol formed by the condensation of water vapor at high relative humidity. Haze is an aerosol of sub-micrometer sized particles that are formed by condensation of water vapor at relatively very low humidity. Whereas the smoke is a well-known pollution aerosol formed by the combination of smoke and fog. There are some coarse particles also, the ambient air particles formed by the mechanical processes. Now let's understand what are the different causes of air pollution. Industries play a major role in the air pollution. The paper and the pulp industry and the plant, petrol refineries and chemical plants are the chief cause of air pollution. Thus, industries release the different type of gases like carbon dioxide, carbon monoxides, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides and some hydrocarbons into the atmosphere. Another cause of the air pollution is smoke. Smoke formation is very common problem and the phenomena is common in big cities. Some gases like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide and unburned hydrocarbons are released into the atmosphere from aircraft. With the combination of these gases with the ultraviolet radiation, a very harmful photochemical called smog is formed. The next category of the pollutants is the automobiles. The automobiles exhaust are most common pollutants or air pollutants due to the combination of the petrol and diesels. Different types of air pollutants are released. This, in combination of these fuels together with the production of the poisonous gases, a large amount of oxygen of the atmosphere is depleted. Carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxides, hydrogen sulfides and hydrochlorides are the notable automobile pollutants among the chemicals released from the different automobiles. Let's see what is dust. Dust is produced in coal mines, stone quarries, steel industries, cotton, jute and rice mills, cement industries and asbestos industries. Industrial operations such as blasting, cutting, grinding, milling, etc. generate dust. It is produced when larger particles are broken into smaller particles. Dust can be organic or inorganic, metallic or non-metallic. Dust particles less than 50 micrometer cannot be seen by naked eyes. Particles between 7 nanometer and 50 nanometer can be detected when strong light is reflected through them. Particles less than 7 micrometer can be seen only under microscope. Most health hazardous particles that cause cardiorespiratory problems in humans on exposure are smaller than 7 micrometer. Dust particles deposited in lungs by impaction, sedimentation and diffusion depending upon the size of the particles, which varies from 1 to 30 micrometer, the degree of depositions, airflow, etc. Dust particle of the size between 5 micrometer to 30 micrometer get deposited at the bifurcation point of trachea bronchial region by the process of impaction. Particles greater than the 30 micrometer size are prevented from entering the respiratory zones. Dust particle of the size between 1 micrometer and 5 micrometer get deposited in the small bronchi and bronchus by the process of sedimentation as the airflow decreases. Dust particles of irregular shape, for example mica, or fibrous nature, that is asbestos, of the size less than 3 micrometer escape sedimentation and impaction in large airways but are intercepted at terminal bronchioles. But dust particles of size smaller than 1 micrometer get deposited in the respiratory bronchioles, alveolar sacs and alveoli by the process of diffusion. Let's understand the impact of air pollution on the respiratory system. Respiratory system responds in a number of ways due to exposure of air pollutants. For example, as an irritant response. At the area of contamination contact on the respiratory system, irritants produce non-specific tissue inflammation and destruction. At high concentration, it produces a burning sensation in nose, eyes and throat. It causes pain in the chest and inflammation of the mucosa producing coughing. It may also penetrate deep into the lungs and causes lung edemas, which is fulfillment of the alveoli with liquid. Exposure to irritants results in the decrease of lungs function, and if critical organs are severely damaged, it may result in permanent loss of some degree of the function, for example, the oxygen exchange capacity of the lungs or removal of the carbon dioxide from the lungs. There can be fibrotic responses. A number of dust particles develop pneumoconiosis. Fibrotic responses of the lungs are characterized by scar formation in the interstitial connective tissue due to inhalation of certain dust and their selective retention in alveoli for interstitial sequestration. Pneumoconiosis are specific fibrotic lesions which differ in type and pattern in accordance with the dust involved. For example, silicosis, which produce nodular type of fibrosis, asbestosis, which produce diffuse fibrosis. Now let's see what are the allergic responses. Certain air pollutants on exposure produce allergy through the process of sensitization. It invokes antibody production on initial exposure to an allergen. Subsequent encounter of the same allergen produce immune response, that is an antibody-antigen reaction. This may occur immediately on encounter or it may be delayed response. The primary allergic reaction on the respiratory systems are bronchial asthma, reaction in upper respiratory tract which involve the release of histamines in the mucosa after immune reactions, and a type of pneumocystis, lung inflammation known as extrinsic allergic alveolitis. Certain chemical allergens may also produce anaphylactic shock, that is a systematic allergic reaction in addition to above local reactions. Then there can be infectious responses. Air pollutants which are infectious in nature can cause tuberculosis, anthrax, ornithosis, histoplasmosis, Leyner's disease, etc. There can be carcinogenic responses of the pollutants. Cancer, which is uncontrolled growth of tissues, can be developed due to the complex process of interacting multiple factors in the host and the environment. But due to long latent period of cancer development in human, typically 15 to 40 years between the onset of exposure and disease manifestation, it is difficult to relate exposure to a specific agent or pollutant. Examples of air pollutants that can produce the cancer in the lungs are arsenic, silica particles with polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and certain nickel dust. Asbestos fibers can cause bronchial cancers and mesothelium of the pleura and peritoneum. Deposited radioactive particles may expose lung tissues to high doses of ionizing radiation, which will lead to cancer or the lung disease. Now let's understand the cardiovascular disease and the air pollution. Cardiovascular disease is very common, and an exposure to air pollution, initiation and exacerbation of the disease occurs. Various studies reflect the association of air pollutants and the number of deaths occurring from cardiovascular diseases. Examination of the evidences was performed to determine the association of air pollution with cardiovascular disease in humans. It utilizes time series approach to investigate whether the chance in the cardiovascular event such as heart attack are accompanied by air pollution. It is assessed by using the available data of daily count of death or hospital admission to the ambient concentration of air pollution on the same or previous days measured by the monitor situated in the study area. Commonly measured pollutants of air are particles of nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, ozone and carbon monoxide, which are positively associated with the cardiovascular problems. These pollutants make existing diseases worse. Air pollutants cause an inflammatory response in the respiratory system, which provokes an increase in the likelihood of the blood to clot or produce erythematosus or erythematous plaques and makes them rupture in the blood vessels. Cardiovascular disease include both the disease of heart and blood vessels. The most commonly encountered cardiovascular disease is coronary artery disease, that is CAD. It is also known as ischemic or atherosclerotic heart disease. This is caused by erythematous plaque occurring in the walls of arteries which supplies blood to the heart. Progressive occurrence and growth of these lesions can lead to narrowing and eventually obstruction of the vessel and thus impaired blood flow to the heart. In addition, plaques also may rupture in the artery, leaving an ulcer in the wall of artery on which a thrombus, that is a blood clot, forms, which possibly leads to complete stoppage or blockage of the artery, which results in the coronary thrombosis or heart attack. Stoppage of the blood supply to the heart results in the heart function stoppage, which cause death of the person, or the area of the heart muscles receive the blood from the artery die and thus replaced by the scar tissue. This is referred as myocardial infarction, that is, death of a portion of the muscle wall of the heart. Coronary artery disease is regarded as the underlying cause of many case heart diseases. Air pollutants affects the reflex activity of the heart by the provoked interaction of pollutants or secondary factors produced by inflammation with receptors of the airways and lungs. This subtly affects the autonomic control of the heartbeat. Atheromatous disease occurring in the blood vessels supplying the brain results in the cerebrovascular disease or stroke, the second most common cardiovascular cause of death. Hemorrhage or bleeding into the brain surfaces can also cause strokes. Atheroma occurs in the arteries supplying the legs, results in peripheral vascular diseases in the main artery or the aorta, cause aortic aneurysms. Atheromatous plaques can break off from the surface and form loose fragments which can block downstream blood vessels. This is called embolism. Various air pollutants tend to be correlated with each other due to their common sources. Thus, it is difficult to disentangle their individual effects, but their mixture results in drastic effect in the cardiovascular function, which can ultimately cause death. Now, let's see the effect of the occupational exposure to the cardiorespiratory functions. Air pollutions and occupation has a symbiotic relationship. Occupation leads to the exposure of the individual to a particular type of air pollutant. Exposure due to the longer durations affects the workers. For example, those people or workers who are constantly working in the environment of the pollutants results in affecting their cardiorespiratory functions. A study of the Swedish man with the myocardial infection showed that when the bus drivers had an exposure, 50% increased risk of myocardial infection was noticed among the drivers. Occupational exposure to the diesel fumes results in affecting their respiratory functions or respiratory infections, and incidents of the heart disease were reported. The bridge and the tunnel workers who are exposed to high level of vehicular exhaust, which causes the air pollutions, such workers died due to the different kind of cardiorespiratory problems or the heart diseases. The mortality is higher among the workers who have a longer exposure to the air pollutants. After cessation of the exposure for a period of time, it was found that the mortality rate has declined. Thus, the length of exposures is affecting the severity of the effect on the cardiorespiratory functions of the workers. Motor engine workers or the workers who are in the motor engine industries are exposed to carbon disulfide, which results from the carbon dioxide production, which is known as the cardiovascular risk factors, increases the cardiac mortality in the industries and the risk of death from the stroke among the workers who are exposed to such chemicals. Those workers who are exposed to the high level of carbon monoxide as well as the particles are markedly increasing the cardiovascular risk because of higher affinity of the hemoglobin to the carbon monoxide, about 200 to 300 times greater than to the oxygen. The presence of even small amount of carbon monoxide may therefore reduce the oxygen transporting capacity of the blood. Carbon monoxide hemoglobin combination cause lesser oxidation of the metabolites and lower supply of oxygen, making the uncomfortable respiratory cycles and heart functions. Let's understand the control of air pollution. The effect of air pollution can be minimized by adopting the following methods. Factories should use fuel that cause lesser pollution and should change the method of manufacture. Factories should be established some distance away from the residential areas. The thermal power plant and factories should install equipments designated properly to limit the emission of pollution or pollutant in the air. Old industries' processes should be so modified that they produce least or no air pollution. Exhaust fumes given by the automobiles should be controlled by changing the design of the engines, adding special ingredients in fuel and fitting pollution control devices to vehicle. The green plant should be planted in the nearby areas of factories and crowded cities. Burning of the vegetable material should be banned. Smoking also should be banned completely. Wet collectors should be used for mist and the fogs. Environmental awareness should be created through education so that the people should know about the ill effect of pollution and try to remove the pollution by all means. Particulate air pollutants can be controlled by the use of settling tanks where particulates matter settle down by gravitational means. So students, let's now summarize what we have learned so far in this module. Humans are dependent on living and non-living environment for their survival. So, humans must live in harmony with the environment. However, we have been constantly changing our environment to a number of ways to fulfill our needs. The population increases and spread all over the globe, resulting in one people's trash basket to another's living space. As a result of human activities for progress and efforts to make the more comfortable, the quality of air is deteriorated day by day. These changes affects men directly through the supplies of water, agricultural or other biological products. The production of pollutants comes as a byproduct of many actions. They are the residues of things humans make, use and throw away, such as pesticides, automobile exhaust and industrial discharges. Clean and pure air is extremely essential for human survival. Pollutants are present in air in gaseous, liquid or solid form at normal temperature and pressure. The latter two, where an aerosol such as the dust, fume, smoke, mist, fog, haze, smoke and coarse particles, commonly measured gaseous pollutants of air are nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, ozone and carbon monoxide, which are positively associated with the cardiovascular health problems. All these adversely affect the cardiovascular and respiratory system. Thank you.